Get ready for the big revival, the real estate revival, that is. Now on 77 WABC, your New York weekend.
Get ready for the big revival.
It's Rand on Real Estate. Look out! With Greg Rand.
All right, welcome to the big real estate revival. This is Greg Rand, your host on 77 WABC and WABCRadio.com. I'm here with Laura Smith, my producer. How are you?
Great to be with you once again.
Yes, great to have you.
Happy summer.
Well, we have a great show on tap for you today. We're going to be talking, as always, about getting rich in real estate. How do you build wealth in the American housing market during the American housing crisis? That's what this show is basically about. We have a lot of cool things to talk about. We're going to talk about how we had a wild roller coaster ride in government this week or in the last couple of weeks, and they made an announcement just a couple of days ago that could have a major impact on helping to solve the foreclosure crisis. We'll kind of break that down for you, make sure you know what you're reading, what you're hearing, and not having to believe what anybody else tells you. We're going to do our usual deep dive into a couple of markets around the country that I'm kind of hot for. One of them is Tampa, St. Petersburg, Florida. We have an expert from the leading real estate company down there, Craig Bagans, who's going to be joining us on the air. And we're going to go back and talk a little more about Atlanta, because I think I gave Atlanta a short shrift last time. I didn't spend enough time telling you why I think that place is such a fantastic opportunity to build wealth. And so we'll dig back into that again. And we're going to take your calls, okay? The best part of the show is hearing from you. So take this number down, 800-848, I almost forgot it, 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-WABC. Give us a call. As always, anything related to real estate, I want to hear from you, okay? I know this thing like the back of my hand. Spent my entire adult life and, half my childhood in the real estate business. My mom was the CEO of a big real estate company, what became a big real estate company up in the suburbs north of here called Better Homes and Gardens, Rand Realty. She's Marcia Rand. She's recovering from a little procedure she had this week, so I hope she's listening and feeling well. I hope Dad's listening too. But yeah, my whole life, man, and this is like running through my veins here. I understand it like the back of my hand. I want you to be the same way. I want you to be excited about this. So call us, 800-848-WABC. Ask questions about if you're particularly interested in Tampa, St. Pete, or Atlanta. That's awesome. But I'll tell you what, I know a lot about a lot of places around this country, and if you've got a market you've got your eye on, call me up. I'll analyze it. We'll talk about it on the fly, and we'll tell you what you can do to do your own homework. You know, here's the thing. I know that you've been dreaming about this. I know that you'd have to be living in a cave not to be aware there's a housing crisis going on, and unless you're really over a barrel, if you've got financial capabilities to make investments right now, you know the housing market is the place you should be thinking. But I have this delusion that while the world is full of people who want to do this, the world is also full of people who don't know how. And so we created my company, OwnAmerica. We created my website, OwnAmerica.com. We created training courses for you for free on that website to teach you how to build wealth in real estate. I wrote a book called Crash Boom. I love that title. Still love it. I'll never get tired of that. What happens after the crash? Well, the boom happens after the crash. So this is all about acknowledging that we're in tumultuous times, acknowledging that we've got a housing crisis going on, but being able to see past it, okay? Being able to see through the fog of recession and to trust the fact that housing in America, as long as people want to come here, as long as they want to live here, as long as people are having kids, as long as population is growing, as long as this remains the best country on the planet, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise, housing here is going to be in demand. And so this crisis presents an enormous opportunity. So that's what the show's about. Make sure you call. If you call, hang on with me, okay? Because I'm going to get to everybody. Again, 848-WABC. The website is WABC.com. We've got listeners we know coming in from all over the country, so we've got a New York area audience, but also I want to hear from people around the country. So
WABCRadio.com.
What did I say?
Sorry, you just said WABC.com.
Well, that's the reason why you're here, to make sure that the training wheels don't fall off here, right?
It's all right.
All right, so let me talk a little bit about what happened. You know, listen, we know, and I'm not going to talk much about this credit downgrade. What I took away from that is basically one thing, and that is it's becoming so painfully clear that they can't solve economic problems out of Washington, okay? And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to let people try everything they can think of and fail at it to finally realize that the way this country operates is not about telling people what to do, trying to control things centrally. It's all about trying to unleash entrepreneurship. It's about, like, if you go back all the way to Plato and Aristotle, all the way through like Anthony Robbins, okay? The people that understood and understand human nature the best, they know that when it comes right down to it, it's either pursuing pleasure or avoiding pain. All right? Every decision, every conversation you have in your own head, every reaction you have to what happens around you is you either trying to avoid pain or pursue pleasure, or in the case of the founding of this country, pursue happiness. And you can't tell people what to do. You have to put carrots out in front of them. You have to create situations where they're going to act in their own best interest, put their own brain power, their own capital, their own talents into play. And there's a glimmer of hope here, because what you've seen over the last 3 or 4 years out of government when it comes to trying to solve this housing crisis is you've seen one probably well-intentioned, but well-intentioned mistake after another. Almost everything they've done is either not worked or backfired. And they made an announcement a couple of days ago of something that I saw coming a long time ago in some shape or form, and I'm very excited about it. And that is, they announced that they're requesting information. It's a cry for people in the private sector, private sources of capital, potential investors, to give suggestions to the government of how they could convert several 100,000 foreclosed properties that the government now owns, convert them into investor-owned rentals. Okay? Now, this is big, because up until now, it's all been about trying to prevent a foreclosure, trying to help somebody stay in their home by reducing their payments, help them stay in their home by reducing their principal of their balance on their mortgage. Now they're saying, all right, these folks are going to rent. We have an issue here that there's too much demand for rentals right now. Calling all landlords, there's too much demand for rentals right now. It's driving rental rates up, and they want to see if they can't keep rental rates reasonable and create housing opportunities for all these millions of people that are either losing homes, selling homes in short sales, or just not buying homes because they're either scared or they can't get a mortgage right now because the mortgage guidelines have gotten tighter. So what they said basically is that here's what their objectives are. Okay, they want to stabilize home values, okay, by turning some of these properties over instead of letting them languish out there in the foreclosure state. They want to get bank-owned properties or government-owned properties off the books altogether. They want to provide affordable housing, okay? Now, the first two things I was okay with. The last one got me a little bit spooked because, you know, they're making believe that they just came up with this like last week. Like after all this time of thinking about it, this sort of, the attitude is sort of like, hey, you know, this idea kind of started getting bounced around the boardroom in the White House, and this notion of, you know, could we actually turn these properties into rentals? And I don't buy that when you've got 1 million man-hours of a lot of smart people locked in rooms for 3 years thinking about this challenge, the fact that none of them have come to the conclusion that maybe you're going to need some rentals, I suspect that maybe they've been thinking about this for a long time. And what spooks me a little bit about this crew is that they have a tendency to want to control things. They have a tendency to want to tell people how to be. And so I'm going to show you a couple of things, just tell you a couple of things that they could do, suggestions that me and people like me are going to be making to the government, and we're going to know, because you can't really believe what they say. You have to look at what they do, right? At least we've learned that, okay? What they say and what they do sometimes are so completely opposite that listen to what they say, but take the cues from what they do to know what their objectives really are. For example, over the last several decades, the momentum has been towards creating policy that enabled people to buy homes, okay, to occupy them, creating home ownership. They really weren't that concerned with investors. In fact, they put obstacles in front of investors. For example, today, if a foreclosed property comes on the market, there's a waiting period before an investor can even make a bid on it, okay? They want to give all the potential home buyers out there first shot at every foreclosure. So they need to lift that, right? They have an obstacle in front of investors. They have to lift that obstacle. Right now, FHA has phenomenal programs for people to buy homes, renovate them, but they don't allow investors to use those mortgage programs. So they could decide right now, if they're listening, they could decide, let's just change that rule and make those loans available to investors. Right now, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac-backed mortgages do not allow investors to own more than 4 properties and get any more mortgages from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They could lift that. And right now, if you have a property that has a renter in there and you have a lease, you have to qualify for that mortgage based upon your income, but you can't use the rental income to qualify for the mortgage. Okay, they changed that rule just a few years ago. So there's a lot of systemic things that are in place right now that the government has total control over that they could literally just lift away, just take away and allow the free market to surge forward. Because I'm telling you, I'm seeing everybody from everyday people out in the field and listeners of this show to massive hedge funds with billions of dollars to invest that are looking at the housing market saying, how do we make a play on this distressed marketplace? And if you enable that and create opportunities for them, they're going to take those opportunities. So watch what happens if over the next month and a half, you see the government come back and say, we have a host of new ideas, and we're not going to try to control rents. We're not going to tell these investors what they can rent them for. We're going to sell them the properties. We're going to make them hold them for a couple of years and rent them out, but we're not going to force them to control the rents or whatever. If they do that, then their motives were pure. If, however, they turn this into the new definition of a national housing project, where a couple of million or several 100,000 single-family homes and condos all across the country are now government-owned, Uncle Sam as landlord, then I'll tell you what, that's been the plan all along. That's been the plan for a couple of years, and they were just playing games to get us here. So now you understand what I understand about this proposal. Watch it closely. Tell your friends and neighbors. Let's all watch this closely and make sure they do the right thing. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about St. Petersburg, and we're taking your calls. So Dave and Maggie, stay on the line. We're getting right back to you. This is Greg Rand on Real Estate on 77 WABC. Back in a minute.